And when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And growing up, they spoke Yiddish, and also English, but they definitely spoke Yiddish. And they always wanted to teach me Yiddish. They were always talking to me in phrases in Yiddish, trying to get me familiar with the language. But there I was, a young boy or a young man, and I was very hesitant. I was very, I pushed back a lot. Listen, speak to me in English. Let's just talk English. And I pushed it away for a long time. So it's something that as I got older, I regretted. I'm going to mute everybody besides for our teacher, just so that there's not so much background noise. So I regretted, later on, I regretted not jumping on that opportunity to have that Yiddish speaking experience in my home or in my grandparents' home growing up. Nonetheless, when I went off to yeshiva, I had the opportunity in various yeshivot to have classes, shiurim classes that were taught in Yiddish. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, as some of you may know. Here I was, a Pittsburgh boy speaking English, going to yeshiva in a foreign country. My first out-of-town yeshiva was in London, England, and jumping into a lecture on the book of Tanya and Kabbalah in Yiddish. That's called diving into the deep end. But you know what? It didn't take that long. It took a little bit. It took a week or two, a few weeks, because a lot of the phrases, even though I may have, pushed them away a little bit, but a lot of the stuff, a lot of the sprach, a lot of the expressions, I ended up getting, whether by osmosis or whatever. And ultimately, there's it triggered what needed to trigger, and I was able to learn, at least be able to listen and understand Yeshiva Yiddish, which might be a different brand of Yiddish, but its own brand of Yiddish. But I was able to pick it up. I only say this because I know that for many of us here tonight, we do have some Yiddish in our background. Parents, grandparents, maybe Yiddish. For some of you, maybe it was your first language even perhaps. So there might be a lot of Yiddish or some Yiddish kind of in your DNA, ready to flourish. And my hope is that this is a renaissance. This is an opportunity to rediscover Yiddish, to rediscover your connection with Yiddish. And really it's a Jewish, as you probably know, Yiddish, another euphemism or another name for Yiddish is Jewish. The question was always, do you speak Jewish? What is speaking Jewish? It's not quoting verses from Torah, but when a Jew says, do you speak Jewish? It means Yiddish. So the goal, I think, is not, at least for me, is not just a language, but also a reconnection to roots and heritage, a reconnection with a Yiddish atam, with a flavor, with an energy, with a feeling. So I am so happy that you're all here tonight. We have close to 70 strong, which is a number that blows me away. And I know there's a lot of surprises in store for all of you. We're going to be doing, or Professor Idell is going to be doing a lot of work with you all together, as well as creating breakout rooms. You should have all received at this point the handout that I sent via PDF. If not, feel free to chat me privately. I'm going to look at the chat box. Feel free to send me a private chat at any point in time. If you need anything, I'm here to help. Once again, I just want to mention that I muted everybody. It's not, please don't be offended. It's just because when you have 70 people with a little bit of background noise, it can create a lot of background noise. So if at any point in time you want to mute yourself, ask your teacher, the protocol over there, but I'm sure there's a way for you to lend your voice to the conversation. Another point of introduction that I'll mention, we're going to jump right in a moment, is I think for a while Yiddish was seen as a dying language, perhaps. By many, I think, Yiddish, who speaks Yiddish anyway? Maybe some folks in Williamsburg and Borough Park and in Israel, maybe, in Bnei Brak, whatever, but like who's speaking Yiddish on a day-to-day? Well, I'll tell you who's speaking Yiddish. You ready? You know who's speaking Yiddish? Shtisel is speaking Yiddish. That's who I know is speaking Yiddish. And I know you know Shtisel, because who doesn't know Shtisel? And Unorthodox is speaking Yiddish. And I think, maybe it takes a little bit of TV drama and a little bit of series to create renaissances, but you know what? So be it. We'll take it. Why not? The bottom line is Yiddish is back in. Yiddish is, is the new, I don't know, whatever is the latest thing. But Yiddish, I think there's a renaissance here. And I think all of you here tonight represent that. We're falling back in love with Yiddish. I want to say this. If you enjoy tonight's session, if you're getting a good energy, and if you're enjoying it after tonight's class, please invite a friend to join. Let them know that they can still jump in. We have a recording. The session is being recorded. So feel free. They can jump in. They can get the recording from the first lesson and continue joining. So give them the link to sign up, or you can give them my information. Happy to help them get involved. All right, without further ado, let me introduce our teacher. Okay, so Dr. Miriam Idell received her PhD in comparative literature from Harvard University. She is a well-respected professor of Yiddish language, literature, and culture at Emory University, our local, wonderful Atlanta-based university. Her research interests include Yiddish modernism, children's literature, and the rise of the Yiddish novel, the relation between modern and classical Jewish literature and American Jewish literature. She is a passionate and devoted teacher and the editor and translator of Honey on the Page, a treasury of Yiddish children's literature. And that is being published in October 2020, just a few months away. If you'd like to pre-order a copy of Honey on the Page, Professor Idell's new book, you can do so on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, or I like to call it Barnes & Knubble, whatever, that's another phrase. But wherever you like, wherever good books are to be found, you can find Professor Idell's book there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a professor. Please take it away.
Okay. Adank. Thank you, Rabbi Solish. So it is such a pleasure to see so many faces, so many new faces, so many receptive faces, and one face that is familiar to me for a long, long time. My dear high school friend of mine is also joining us tonight. So shout out to Giovanna, and welcome to everybody else. I'm thrilled to see all of you. So I'm gonna just start with some polling questions. And I don't know if you know how to use the little hand, the digital hand on Zoom. If you do, feel welcome to use it. If not, use your flesh and blood hand. But I'm curious, how many people out there in Zoom land had a previous generation, whether it was parents or grandparents, who used Yiddish to talk about things they didn't want the children to understand? Okay, I'm just gonna scroll through. Yep, I see. Okay, on pages 2 and 3, we also have, okay. So a lot of people, that's probably one of the most frequent comments that people make after my giving a lecture or teaching a class. So I thought I would get that right out there and see that for a lot of Jewish families, Yiddish was a remnant, it was a residue of the past, but it was, because of all kinds of reasons, it was not something that was being carried forward into the future. How many of you heard Yiddish growing up in dicey driving situations? When something maybe not so good happened on the road? Is that an occasion when anyone heard Yiddish? Yeah, that's when I heard Yiddish words growing up, very much as these kind of individual fossil words trapped in amber with no context around them. Let me ask a different kind of a question. How many of you have, I'll say, reading facility, not necessarily full fluency, but reading facility with Hebrew and with the Hebrew alphabet? Okay. A number, by no means all, which is fine. That's not going to set us back. But I was curious. So what is Yiddish? Yiddish is a fusion language of the Jewish people. There are a lot of really interesting arguments about exactly when and exactly where it started, but there is a general consensus that Yiddish arose among the Jews living between the Rhine and the Rhone rivers in what we now call Germany, probably in the region of the 3 great towns of German Jewish Ashkenaz, Mainz, Speyer, and Worms, about 1,000 years ago, as a as a spoken language. And Yiddish wasn't always called Yiddish. It was called Ashkenaz. It was called, let me just pause and admit a couple more people who are joining. It was called Ashkenaz. It was called Lishonenu, our tongue, our language. And then around 1500, it begins to be referred to as Yiddish, as Jewish, and then also as Taich, which might be more familiar in the modern word Deutsch or Deutsch, Deutsch being German, because it was that Germanic language the Jews were actually speaking in their everyday lives. And so I don't want to spend a really long time on the history of Yiddish. I just want to give you a slight overview. But if you are curious and you want to follow up at book length, you can check out Yiddish Civilization, The Rise and Fall of a Forgotten Nation by Paul Krivacek. This is considered a pretty authoritative history of the language and culture. If you want things in a more bite-sized pieces, I will talk about the free YIVO Encyclopedia online. This is a resource that you can access on the internet. I'll mention it again closer to the end of class. And there is an article, if you feel more like an encyclopedia length article on the history of Yiddish to give you a little bit of grounding, that's also available. So we have 1,000-year history, and we have a language that starts with the Jews living in Ashkenaz, in the area that's now Germany, and then moving eastward with those Jewish people as they began to move eastward into what eventually became the Habsburg lands, Poland, Hungary, Russia, and up north to Lithuania, Latvia, the Baltic republics. And all of those places experience a Jewish demographic bloom between the 16th and 20th centuries, and Yiddish moves with the Jewish people into those territories. We have our first written snatch of Yiddish, just a sentence in Yiddish, in 1272 in a machzor, which is a special prayer book for Rosh Hashanah, for the Jewish New Year. The book is in Hebrew, as a standard machzor would be, but I don't know if you've seen medieval illuminated manuscripts where there tends to be a very large, beautifully written, calligraphied initial word at each section of the text. So we have one of those, and then in between those big, beautiful Hebrew letters with all of the white space, we have a single Yiddish sentence calling down a blessing upon the person who carries this book to shul. So that's the first known instance of written Yiddish that we have. And we have this eastward shift so that by 1939, the eve of the Holocaust, we have 13 million Yiddish speakers, huge Yiddish cultural centers in Warsaw and Vilna in Lithuania, or now it's known as Vilnius, but Vilna at the time, or Vilna in Yiddish. Vilna was known as Yerushalayim Delita, as the Jerusalem of Lithuania. And there was a real cultural efflorescence in Yiddish and through Yiddish from, I want to say, the 17th through the 20th centuries. So that is your very brief overview. So what are the linguistic components of Yiddish? It is commonly thought of, oh, wait, I see we have some questions. Okay, so let me call on Holly, first of all. Holly, can we unmute you? I'll unmute you, there we go.
I have no question.
You do or you don't?
Do not.
Do not, I saw your hand raised.
Oh,
Okay, so
sorry.
lower your hand. Okay, Sharna Perlo, do you have a question?
Oh, maybe it's another Holly.
That was at Holly EY?
EY, yeah.
Okay. Sharna Perlo, do you have a question?
No.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna lower your hand. Okay. And I'm gonna just remute Holly if that's okay. All right. Does anybody have questions but not know how to use the hand raising feature in Zoom? I'm gonna quickly, yes, okay, I can't see the first name, Lisa Fuchs. So let me quickly unmute you. Still adjusting to teaching this larger class over Zoom. Rabbi Solish, can you help me unmute Lisa Fuchs?
She would have to unmute herself.
Oh, I can't unmute you. So
No.
do you see how to unmute yourself? You.
Okay, I'd say let's
Okay,
our
we'll go
game.
on. But you can also text a question. You can use the chat feature and text it to me or to Rabbi Solish with the chat feature, and we'll go on. Okay, I see we have some comments. So yes, in Mexico, Yiddish in Mexico, absolutely. Mexico is a good generation and a half behind the United States in the linguistic assimilation whereby Yiddish was forgotten. Okay, so a note for anyone who needs to unmute yourself, click your photo, click the 3 dots and click unmute. You can try that to unmute yourself. Anybody want to do that? Okay, so if there are no other questions or questions that I can hear, I'm gonna just move on and talk about the linguistic components of Yiddish. So it is a Germanic language insofar as we estimate. Now, this is very important to realize that there's no exact mathematical formula for this because the Yiddish of different speakers in different places at different times varies. That's going to be a major theme of this course, the variability of Yiddish and the tension between that kind of natural variability as an ungovernable fusion language and the desire to standardize things and sort of pull it in to a coherent center. So with that huge caveat, we estimate or we guesstimate that about 65% of Yiddish words, of Yiddish vocabulary is derived from German. About 15 to 20% is from what we call Loshen Kodesh, which encompasses both Hebrew and Rabbinic Aramaic or Talmudic Aramaic. So a lot of very common words in Yiddish, like davka, meaning particularly, especially, necessarily, that word comes to us through Aramaic. One of the more surprising elements in Yiddish is that we have a very small but very deep layer, meaning going all the way back to early Yiddish, from the Romance languages, from the Latin-derived languages that also produce Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian. And so you'll see that in words like bench. Bench is to say the grace after meals, but more generically, it means to bless because it's really a sort of its own evolution of the Latin word benedicere, to speak good, right? To speak good is to bless, and that gives rise to bench. Similarly, the word mensch also has Latin origins. So we have this very small but very important Romance stratum or component of the language. And then everything else that you get is a combination of Slavic, which enters the language a little bit more recently in the 16th through 20th centuries. So that can be Polish, that can be Russian, that can be Ukrainian. And now for the living language of Yiddish, of course, English and Spanish and wherever Yiddish is being spoken next to and in relation to other living languages. So I had an experience years ago where I went to the Hamawak for a Shabbos. I went to this kosher resort in the Catskills, and I noticed that a lot of people spoke Yiddish, and I was really excited that I was going to get to speak some Yiddish in the wild. And people there, the women that I struck up conversations with, were friendly at first, and then they were kind of increasingly suspicious because my Yiddish sounded all wrong. And there's this one woman who's really nice, and I said, you know, what's wrong with my Yiddish? Why isn't anybody talking to me? And she said, well, you say really weird things, like you said, der Fenster. So I don't know if you remember back to your high school history class, but remember the defenestration of Prague? Anyone remember hearing about the defenestration, right? Throwing somebody out a window? Well, der Fenster is the Yiddish word for window, but that's not how window is said today in Williamsburg or Borough Park or probably Antwerp. They say die Winde. And if you don't say die Winde, then your Yiddish sounds really weird. And there are other words like that. So that doesn't mean that Yiddish is being degraded and its purity is being compromised by all of this terrible, barbaric American English. No, I don't agree with that, and I don't think that most scholars of the language would agree with that. That means that Yiddish is a living language, and living languages are really messy because they become entangled with the other languages being spoken around them. So those are the component languages. Now, Yiddish has always been written, that one of the things that distinguished it and clearly made it a Jewish language, like Ladino and Judeo-Arabic and Talmudic Aramaic and all of the Jewish languages of the Indian subcontinent, which have fewer speakers but are fascinating. One of the things that's always distinguished Yiddish as a Jewish language is that it is written in Yiddish oisius, in Hebrew Yiddish letters. So I want to run us quickly through the Yiddish alphabet, the Aleph Beis, not because I expect you to learn this alphabet on the fly if you don't already have a strong foundation in it, but rather because so many of you do have some Hebrew reading, and this will kind of shore things up for you. And also because even though everything we talk about and everything we do in this class is going to be available in English transliteration, English transcription, it's still really important to just have that Yiddish tam, that Yiddish flavor of what the language has actually historically looked like and read like to its speakers. So I have a delightful resource here. I have my set of Aleph Beis cards, which I purchased at the Yiddish Book Center, which, by the way, is renovating their whole online bookstore operations. They're about to relaunch it in a week or so, and they have some really delightful items, and I'll give you that link as well. But I'm just going to run you through these delightful cards, so which have already somehow gotten out of order since I put them in order, and I'm missing the first card. I don't know how that happened. I'm gonna chalk that up to my kids. All right, so the first letter is an aleph that looks just like this, nothing under it, nothing around it, and that's called a shtumer aleph, a silent aleph. Because, why do we need a silent letter? In Hebrew, vowels are always attached to consonants. There's no such thing as beginning a word with a vowel. That would be kind of an orphaned vowel, and we don't want that to happen. So we always attach a vowel to a consonant. So in Yiddish, we sometimes also need to begin a word with a vowel sound, and in those instances, we use our silent aleph. All right, and I'm sure I'll find the card immediately after class. Then we move on to an aleph with a line under it. That line in Yiddish is known as a shtrichele. This particular shtrichele, which is a cognate of the word strike, to strike a little line, this particular one is known as a pasach. You might know it from modern Sephardic Hebrew as a patach. In Yiddish, we call this a pasach aleph, and it begins the word arbel, or sleeve, that you see depicted here. One of the most famous songs that you might know from Yiddish is called Afen Pripetchik. Afen Pripetchik steht der Feuer und in Stub is heiß. On the hearth, there's a fire and the room is warm. And it's a scene of an old-fashioned cheder rabbi, a rabbi in an elementary school for little Jewish boys, instructing his pupils in the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph base, and he starts out by teaching them Chometz Aleph O, and that's how the song ends. This is called Chometz Aleph, Kamatz Aleph in modern Hebrew, and it makes the sound O as in oxen, oxen, another good cognate word for English. So that's O. Then we come to Beis. Bet in modern Hebrew, Beis in Yiddish, and this word begins ber. And I'm very fond of this word and this letter because my middle son his middle name is Dov or Ber. All right. After Beis comes Vase. In Yiddish, we distinguish Beis from Vase not by putting a dot in the Beis, but rather by putting a shtrichele, a line over the vase. And here it appears in the Hebrew word levone, or moon. Now, one thing that's really important to know about the vase and a few other letters is that there are certain sounds that can be represented by two different letters. And the words in Yiddish that come from a Germanic or a Slavic, any origin other than the Holy Tongue, the Hebrew and the Aramaic, Lashon Kodesh, Stammekewerter, any words that come from other languages use one letter to represent a given sound, and words that come from Hebrew or Aramaic might use a different one. So this letter Vase only ever appears in words that come from Hebrew or Aramaic. All right. Then we get to Gimmel, the G sound, as in Gans, a goose is a Gans. Daled is a D, as in Dach, a roof. So we just had this fabulous, fabulous performance that it was like the Hanukkah miracle. They thought it was going to go for a month, and it went for a year and a half in New York. Fiddler auf dem Dach, fiddler on the roof in Yiddish. So this is the Dach that the fiddler was on. Hey, let me see another quick show of hands. How many of you have a Hund or a Hintele? Anybody have a little Hund? Anybody have a Hund with a Yiddish name? I'm just quickly surveying. Anybody have a Hund with a Yiddish name? Okay.
Perfect.
Who does? Marsha.
Perfect.
Perfect. Fantastic. A little belly button Hund. Yeah. All right. We have a cat named Kessel. So, all right. Then we get to Vav. In Yiddish, when you see one Vav alone, it's always a vowel. A single Vav is always a vowel U. So that could be like in Hut, a hat. It could be like in Vulkan, a volcano. But a single Vav is always an U. And when it's needed for clarity, it will sometimes have a little dot inside of it to remind everyone that it's a vowel, especially when it comes after its friend, Zwei Vaven, a double Vav. See how this is the same letter? This is one at a time. This is two at a time. So a Zweivoven, that's what we call this letter. This is the preferred way of representing the sound V in any word that comes from German, English, Spanish, Russian, Polish, you name it, anything other than Hebrew or Aramaic. So this is a veverke, a squirrel, and that is indeed a Slavic word. Then we get to Zayin, the Z sound. Zayin, as in Zok, a sock. Okay? Some of you might know the word Zekel, a bag, like a tallis bag for a prayer shawl. Okay? Now we get to another sound that can be represented by two different letters. This is the way we represent it in the Hebrew-derived words. This is a ches, a ch sound, as in challah. See this delightful-looking challah bread here. Then we come to our tes, which is for tish, a table. A tish is literally a table. You might have sometimes heard of a tish as an event, as a Rebbe's tish. It was very popular for Hasidic leaders to gather the community, and particularly the community of men, around a table to drink, to sing, to exchange words of Torah, and that came to be called a tish because it happened around the table. After the tes comes a yud, which can function as a consonant y or a vowel e, very much as a y can do in English. And here we have it in the word yingle, for boy. That is a diminutive form of the word jung, which will sound to you like young. It's a cognate of young. Okay. Then we have a kaf. If it has a dot in it, then it's the softer sound k. If it has no dot, it's a chaf. It's a more guttural sound ch. So this kaf comes also in words that are derived from Hebrew or Yiddish, as in this word kais, a cup, particularly a kiddush cup, over which the sanctification of the Sabbath is recited at the beginning of the Sabbath meal. So getting back to that guttural chaf, if it comes in the beginning or the middle of a word, it looks like this. If it comes at the end of the word, it has this final or elongated form. In Yiddish, instead of calling it the final chaf, we call it the long chaf, the langer chaf. So we have chvalius, waves, at the beginning of a word, and we have buch. Now I'm gonna just have a little digression to talk to you about buch. Just as Inuit people are reputed to have a lot of words for snow, you can imagine that a Jewish language would have a lot of different words for book, right? We have a lot of ways of referring to book. There are two principal ones, and we make a division between the sacred and the mundane through these words. Any book that has to do with sacred matters, whether it is a book of narrative, like parts of Tanakh, of the Bible, or Medrash, or whether it has to do with law, like parts of the Talmud or the medieval codes of Jewish law, every one of those books is known as a sefer, which is a word derived from Hebrew. That's the neutral Hebrew word for book, and the plural in Yiddish is sforim. Every other book, whether it's a book of medieval fairy tales or a modern novel or a book of poetry or a book of jokes, you name it, that is a buch. And the plural is bicher, and that comes from Germanic. Comes from the German. So that is buch. Getting back to the Aleph base, we have a lamed, this tall letter. For lump, lamp, that's our lamed. We have a mem, that's a m sound. This is the form at the beginning or in the middle of a word. This is the form at the end. And this one is called a schloss mem, a sealed mem, both because it seals the word and because its own shape is this sealed off shape. So we have mern, carrots, and we have boim, a tree that ends in that m sound, boim. All right. Sorry, I can't resist another quick digression. Mern, this word for carrots. Look for this on Rosh Hashanah. On the first night of Rosh Hashanah, we eat a number of symbolic foods on that first night of Rosh Hashanah, and most of them involve Hebrew language puns, but a few of them involve Yiddish language puns. And one of the Yiddish language puns is that there are different versions of it, but our merits or our wealth or our children should increase, which is to become mer, more, should meren sich. They should increase, which is a pun on the word carrot. So we eat some carrot and we say that, all right? And that's our Yiddish pun on Rosh Hashanah. All right, onward to a nun and the final form of a langer nun, the n sound. So we have nose and we have fan, a pan is a fan. All right, samech, this is the typical way of making the S sound that we see in everything but Hebrew and Aramaic words that demand the other one, which is coming up. It's the sin. This is the samech. And here we have disove, the owl. Now here's where things get interesting. In Hebrew, this ayin is a consonant. It's a consonant that in Ashkenazic pronunciations of Hebrew, we don't really know how to pronounce anymore. It's mostly become a silent letter. In the Yemenite tradition, there's still a very clear legacy of pronouncing this as a guttural consonant that is kind of roughly equivalent to the Arabic Ghain. But we don't really have that in Ashkenazi Hebrew. Because we lost the sense of that as a consonant, it freed up the letter to function in Yiddish as a vowel instead of a consonant. So one of the most important reading differences between Hebrew and Yiddish is that in Yiddish, and particularly in words that stem from German, Slavic, English, etc., this is the vowel sound eh, as in apple. All right, then comes pay, the p sound. It has a dot in it, as in this word peikel, poik. The dot distinguishes it from its friend, the fe, that has a shtrichele written over it in Yiddish that makes the f sound. Now, you'll notice if you had to do a semester of linguistics in college, the way I did, you'll notice that the difference between the base and the vase, the pay and the fe, is that one of them in linguistic terms is the continuant and the other is the non-continuant. The non-continuant, you say b and you can't keep saying it. You say p and you can't keep saying it. Whereas in the same place of articulation in your mouth, you can make the same sound, but the continuant version you can say until you need a breath. These are the same sounds with the same places of articulation, but one is continuant and the other is non-continuant. So for our non-continuants, we have the fe and we have the final, or in Yiddish, langer, long fe at the end of a word. So we have fish at the beginning of a word and shif, a ship, at the end of the word. Okay. All right. Tsari, a tzig, a goat, a final tsari, a katz, like my ketzel. I'm going to speed up because I want us to have a little time to talk to our neighbors. Kuf is for camel. Reish is for a rose. A rose. This is the R sound. Shin, sh, is a single sound in the alphabet. For shich, in this case, shoes. Sin, this is one of those letters that only appears in the Hebrew and Aramaic derived words. Asar, a prince or a king. Then we get to our t sound at the end of the alphabet, a talmid. This only appears in those Hebrew and Aramaic derived words, and so does its cousin without the dot, a sof, which occurs at the ends of words, and it's pronounced in a soft way in Yiddish and Ashkenazic Hebrew, as in the end of the Aleph base, the alphabet. All right. Then the thing that really makes Yiddish sound like Yiddish, which is the diphthongs. A diphthong is when two vowels decide that they love each other so much that they want to live together as one and make a single sound. So I know these will sound familiar. Oi, vav yud is oi. I. So a zwei yuden, two yuds with a pasach under says I, and a. When we have two yuds with nothing under it, that says a. So we have oi in oigen, we have I in eyes, this is a block of ice, and we have a as in dreidel. So those are the sounds of Yiddish. And now, if you have your sheet that was sent around, I would like to invite you to open it up, and I have it on a second screen, which has meanwhile fallen asleep. So it'll take me a moment. Security. All right. So you'll notice that you have everything written out in the Yiddish oisius, in the Yiddish alphabet, and also in a form of transcription that is the current standard of the YIVO Institute. So I told you that there's always been a tension between this kind of ungovernable, chaotic fusion language with speakers in really disparate locations with different traditions about how things sound, how things are spelled, on the one hand. And on the other hand, the desire to standardize, to create something that's going to be a universal international standard that Yiddish speakers all over the world can recognize and learn in. So that is how I learned. It's called Klaussprach, which means standardized speech. And that's what I'm going to be using for our materials. You might have a pronunciation tradition in your family that sounds a little bit different than what you're seeing here. You might notice as we get further into this that the way the characters speak, on Shtisel they actually sound pretty much like this, but if you watch Unorthodox, you'll notice that the Hungarian Yiddish of the speakers in Williamsburg, the vowels sound really different from what we're going to be doing. You'll eventually get the hang of it. So I'm going to go over this sheet really quickly. And then I'm going to put us in breakout rooms so that you can practice using all of this. So, Lomir Zikh Bakenen, let's get to know each other. Wie heißt du? What's your name? Literally, what are you called? Wie heißt ihr? Yiddish has an informal you, du, and a more formal you, like du and usted in Spanish. So ir is the more formal you, and that gets conjugated with a verb in the third person. We'll talk about verb conjugations next time. Wie heißt du auf Yiddish? Sometimes people have an English name like, I don't know, Myron, and then a Yiddish or Jewish name like Moshe. right? So if you have a Yiddish name that you want to use in this class, you should feel welcome to do so. If you don't have one and you want one, email me or chat me and I'll make sure you get one that feels right to you. And if you want to use your regular everyday name, then use that. It's all about how you want to be referred to. Wo wohnst du? Where do you live? Der Tate lebt noch? Is your father still living? Wie heißt er? What is his name? Wie hat geheißen? What was his name if he's no longer among the living? Die Mama lebt noch? Is Mama still alive? Wie heißt sie? What is her name? Wie hat sie geheißen? What was her name? Von wannen stammt die Mishpoche? Where does your family come from? Now, this is a very interesting verb, stammt. It is a cognate of the English word stem. So we're picturing a sort of blossoming family tree that has roots in a place. And that place is your Upstamm. It's where your family is from. So von wannen, from where, stammt die Mishpoche, the family. Zaidy Bobe, in Yiddish, we have Tata Mame, we have mom and dad as the parental unit, and we have Zaidy Bobe, which is the grandparental unit, grandpa, grandma. Zaidy Bobe hat geredet Yiddish. Did grandma and grandpa speak Yiddish? And then, to bring it up to date a little bit, Sie hast du Kinder? Do you have children? Eneklach? Grandchildren? Wo wohnen sie? Where do they live? So don't feel like you have to get through the whole list in the next, 10, 15. We'll probably go about 5 minutes over tonight. I'm dividing you into about 10 breakout rooms. I imagine not all of you have used this function in Zoom yet. So in a moment, I'm going to press on open all rooms. You're going to be invited to join your breakout room. Click on that, try to go through some of these questions, giving brief answers. You can answer in English to the other people in your group. And I will be visiting room by room, and I'll invite Rabbi Solish also to just look in on the various rooms and see what's going on and if people have questions or are getting stuck on anything. I don't know that we will come back together. I'll be happy to. I'll offer everyone to come back about 9:05, 9:10. And if you want to come back and reconvene, great, I'll be here. And if you feel like you need to move on and do other things with your evening, that's fine too. All right, so thank you. And now I'm opening the breakout rooms. So some of you came a little later, and I'm just going to assign you to rooms. Those of you who are still here, do you see how to get to your breakout room? I see Rhoda still here and okay. And it looks like Morris and Elizabeth are still here, and maybe Chaim Rubin. Do you know how to get to your breakout rooms if you're still? Okay, Rabbi Solish, how are we doing? I can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
I was saying, Baruch Hashem, fantastic. I was checking your lip reading skills. No, I'm kidding. I forgot to unmute. So it looks like, hold on, Morris, can you get to your breakout room?
He might have gone to do something for.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to just start visiting. I'm going to start with breakout room 1. What if you start with?
How do you visit breakout rooms? Because I'm invited to breakout room 8. I may not have, but I don't think, I think only a host can, which is fine.
Okay. Fine. All right. So I'll see you later.
I'm going to jump into the breakout room 8 just to jump in on that.
At 9:05, I will close the rooms and I'll invite everyone back.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Hey. How's the breakout room?
It was good. It was good. Good to know why people are learning Yiddish.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Fantastic.
it certainly was my Mame Loshen. My grandparents spoke and my parents spoke to
Wow.
grandparents, and they would speak to each other, members of their family. So a lot of it is here. I just need to put it on the tongue.
Yeah. Where are you from? Are you from South Africa?
Yes, yes.
Nice. I recognize the accent. My wife is from South Africa.
Oh, what part is she from?
She's from near Sydenham, sure.
Oh, I'm from Cape Town.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
The
But
nice part of the country.
yeah, my
The
parents,
beautiful part.
my mother was from Lithuania, my father from Poland. So
Wow.
yeah. So
When
there's
did you guys come to the state?
I
You're
came in
from
80
Atlanta?
sorry,
You're in Atlanta?
yes, we came in 1988.
Oh,
My
wow.
husband and my daughter and son. Yeah.
Nice.
So they grew up here and married. My son lives in Chicago with his family. And Miriam, I taught your son, Itzi, at GHA years ago.
All right, so I have more questions for you later, but I'm gonna hop to the next.
Yeah.
He's mostly civilized now. All right, I'm gonna
Is he still, I'm always scared to ask because one day I asked somebody, oh, what school's your son at? And they said, no, he's married with children.
No, he's a rising junior at Weber.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, I have to get to breakout rooms 9 and 10, or 8, 9, and 10. So I'm gonna rush.
Okay.
Wait, this is breakout? No, okay. Rabbi Solish is not in.
This is the general session.
Okay.
Hey, Sandy. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi.
Hey. Were you guys in the same breakout room?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Okay.
Okay, I think I'm going to leave and I'll see you on next Monday, please God.
Fantastic. Great to see you tonight.
Yes, thank
We'll
you.
see you. We'll see you next week. Same bat
Yeah.
time, same bat channel.
Thank you.
All right.
You guys have a good night. Thanks.
All
You
right.
too.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Looks like folks are coming back. If you're coming back, I think Professor Udel is going to kind of wrap things up. But if you have to go, you can certainly leave. Hold on, you want to jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Breakout rooms are closing.
All
So
right.
The big room should be repopulating.
It's like magic here.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable.
The people disapparate and then they reapparate. Like in Harry Potter, there's a spell to disapparate, make people disappear. And
Incredible. One thing, by the way, I noticed I was in the breakout room and they were wondering if they were supposed to answer in Yiddish. So I took the liberty of saying no. The main thing is to practice asking the questions and then answer as is familiar.
that's right.
But I hope I gave the right answer.
Totally. There's not going to be a test either.
Good.
Gott sei Dank.
All right, go to Duncan. All right, so we are, all right, we should be here now. We should all be here. Anyone who's able to still be here. Okay, so the feedback that I got, I see a hand from the Margolises. I'll get right to you. The feedback that I got is that it would be really helpful to have the translation together with the worksheet. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put the translation on. If you want to look ahead for next week, you can look at that second portion of the worksheet that says, Lomir sich begrüßen, let's greet each other. And we're going to talk next time about some greetings, and then we'll move on to talk about some proverbs. No problem, the person who has to leave. Let me call on the Margolises who are muted.
I'm not muted.
Well, nishkoshe, what that means.
Nishkoshe. So we'll talk about it next week, but nishkoshe is so-so. Mezzo.
Nothing to do with kosher.
And oiskemuchit.
Oiskemuchit is exhausted. So I put
So
some,
do we get a new email with new printouts every week?
probably.
Okay.
I'm going to update the one that you had tonight to put the translation on so that everyone will have that. And next time, we're going to spend a little bit more time with this one at the beginning of class, and we're going to move on to that second half, Lomir sich begrüßen, let's greet each other, and we'll talk about, you know, typical greetings and responses.
How do you say yes and no? Yes and no.
Yo, name.
Name. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Feel welcome to unmute yourselves. Harriet.
Did you say that you would put this lesson on a video somewhere for us?
I never ever said that. I did not. But Rabbi
Okay.
Philip
already
said
said
we
it.
recorded this
Sorry.
one, right?
Who said it?
Yeah.
Rabbi
so-
Ari said it.
Yeah, this session is being recorded, video and audio, assuming that it comes out correctly as is intended, then we should have a digital copy that I can make available to those that wish to review it. But like Professor Idell said, the plan is to update the sheet, and we're gonna send out the sheet from the first, the updated sheet. And hold on one second, let me mute everybody because once again, it's getting hard to hear. Okay, so here's the deal. We're gonna send out an updated version of the handout to everybody. I'll send by email in the next 24 hours or whatever, as soon as I get that from the professor. And then after that, by next week, we'll again send out a handout. So just look at the emails. If my email, by the way, that I introduced this course with, if it went into your spam folder, let me know and we'll try to figure that out, why that's happening. But otherwise, we should all be communicating via email in between the classes to get you what you need before and after.
Okay, wait, Kim, if you're still here, now I'm seeing you want a Yiddish name. Stay and talk to me for a minute.
Warte minute.
I have a question.
Yes, I'll take questions.
So it's a fusion language, and I understand the geography of origin, but I don't understand like the purpose of the origin. So it wasn't clearly something done in an effort to assimilate, because it's very distinctive, and it sounds like it had enough of a blend with the local language that it really wasn't trying to be secretive or insular. So I'm wondering if it had to do with the fact that there was no modern Hebrew, and since there is the fusion of Hebrew and Aramaic with the local language, if this was in response to the fact that there was only at the time biblical Hebrew and no modern Hebrew.
So you're asking a very complex question, Karen, about the why of Yiddish. And it's complex in the sense that we don't really have a definitive answer to how this arose.
Or why it arose,
right? So the assumption is that I would look less in the direction of what was the status of Hebrew and more in the direction of what were the social conditions of Jews living in that area between the Rhine and the Rhone. They are doing business with speakers, now mind you, not of modern German, but of Middle High German. Linguistically, Yiddish is an offshoot of Middle High German, right? So they're doing business with those people. They are living immersed in a German-speaking environment in the day-to-day, although without access to any German schooling or education. They have their own separate educational arrangements, their own, the points of tangency and contact between Jews and Christians at that time were so much more in the economic sphere than in any other sphere of life or culture. So on the one hand, there is all of this kind of daily interaction. On the other hand, it's very much in its own kind of separate sphere from home, the ideal discourse of Torah study, meaning ideal in the sense that it was supposed to be the highest aspiration of everyone in the culture to be conversant in Torah study, which still took place in Hebrew and Aramaic. So it's something to do with that sort of weird friction with all of that contact, but at the same time, deep divisions and separations from Gentile neighbors. Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds. It sounds like things haven't changed in a while. You know, we always have that tension between, you know, being part of, being separate. I want to mention a few other things as we close out tonight's session. First of all, I want to thank our teacher, Professor Miriam Idell. Thank you very much for tonight's session, which is only part one of a 4-part series. Like I said before, invite friends to join that still that might enjoy it. There's still a lot to go in this course. I do want to mention a few things. First of all, I want to acknowledge all of you who are with us here this evening. I know that some of you are from Atlanta, many of you are from Atlanta, but I also know that we have participants from around the country and even around the world. So I want to acknowledge all of you, whether you're local in Atlanta, I guess on Zoom everyone's local or not local, but I want to acknowledge those of you that are geographically close to where the Intown Jewish Academy is, but also those who are from far. Thank you for being here. I also want to mention one more thing. Tomorrow night, anybody familiar with a book called The Giving Tree? The Giving Tree? Professor, is there a Yiddish version of The Giving Tree?
It has been translated into Yiddish.
Okay.
Wow.
The Giving Tree. So tomorrow night, I am presenting the Giving Tree, a Jewish perspective, not Jewish like Yiddish. That's maybe enough for part two. But this is a Jewish perspective on the book, The Giving Tree. There are a lot of deep insights into this book. It's a very misunderstood work. Tomorrow night, I will be presenting at 8 o'clock. It's a Zoom session. If you want more information, just reach out to me. I'll give you the link. It's a free session open to everyone. Lessons from The Giving Tree on education, on leadership, on parenting, incredible lessons. So if you're interested for a deeper look at The Giving Tree, so join us tomorrow night. Otherwise, Doctor, do you want to take some more questions, or should we close it out for tonight?
Miriam?
Yeah.
Miriam, I would like a Yiddish name.
Okay. Well, I would suggest Adel.
Yes, it's perfect.
Adel means refined, right?
Miriam,
Yeah,
may I make a technical suggestion?
sure.
Your audio is really low.
Yes.
So, and it's very hard to hear without straining.
Yes.
So if you go to the audio portion and adjust it so that it's not like automatic, but that it's full volume, it will be a lot easier for those of us who are straining to hear.
I'm so glad you told me, Dorothy.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, where is my
Go to the little audio version of it, and then you'll see more, and it'll say audio settings. Go to the little audio icon, the microphone. And then when you go to audio settings, set it at maximum instead of adjusting automatically.
Okay. Audio settings.
See that?
Volume. Oh, I see. It's automatic default.
Yeah, you want it at full volume.
Okay, how are we doing now?
Unbelievably better.
Better? Oh, I'm so glad you told me.
Unbelievably better.
All right. If I forget and it resets to the default, somebody just remind me.
I will remind you. I will remind you.
Awesome. Kim,
Thank
we
you.
still need to get you a name.
Me?
Where's Kim?
I'm leaving. I'm gonna go. Good night, everyone.
Good
Bye,
night.
Susan.
Yeah, I'm here.
Kim,
I always had
Kim.
a name that was way too short. I'm not Kimberly, I'm just Kim. And
You're
it's,
Kim.
yeah,
Do
and
you
it's,
have a Hebrew name? Do you have a?
actually, my middle name is Anne, and I'm not Jewish, so I don't have a Hebrew name. but
Oh, so then I'm going to suggest, as a cognate with Anne, I'm going to suggest Hannah for Yiddish class. Because
Anna?
Anne is connected to the biblical Hannah.
Okay,
So in Yiddish, that would be Hannah. So
okay,
your
that's
Yiddish class name is Hannah.
Hannah. Okay,
Great.
very-
Welcome, Hannah.
okay, thank you.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
My son,
Anybody else need a name or have a
I'll
question?
take one.
Okay, Susan, do you have a Hebrew name of Shoshana, perhaps?
Well, yes, I lived in Israel for a year and they called me Shoshana.
Perfect. Now you're Razel.
No, Razel
I'm
is
what?
Tita.
Say it again.
I said Razel is rose, like Shoshana is rose.
Okay.
So I would propose,
Okay.
I would propose that Susan be Razel and that Rosita be Razel.
Oh, yeah, ich bin Razele. Ständig, ich
You
bin
be
Razele.
Razel, because you have a diminutive in each language.
Yeah,
So you're Razel.
good.
You see that? It's just Pasha making shalom in the class. It's amazing. Every day.
Yeah. I'd like
Very
Yes,
good.
all things are possible.
I'd like one, Miriam.
Okay, wait, who's talking?
Karen.
Karen. Karen, do you have a Hebrew name?
It's Karen.
It's Karen.
Yes.
That is like a super modern name. Let me think.
So modern.
Do you feel strongly attached to your initial K sound?
No.
I mean, I would suggest maybe a good like traditional Yiddish name would be Kayla.
Was
Because
it
it's
Ayla?
Kayla, Keyle, Kayla.
Yeah, okay.
Kayla could be a good Yiddish class name. Yeah, there are certain Hebrew names that are so modern Hebrew that it's very hard to come up with equivalents for them in Yiddish.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, good.
so
Thank
I would suggest Kayla.
I propose that next week everyone gets on with their Yiddish name. I love that idea.
That would be super fun.
That'd
And
be
if
awesome.
you need help coming up with one, yeah,
This is Judy. I have no idea if my name is Hebrew or Yiddish.
it's both. It's
My-
Udel.
My name is Elka.
It's Elka. Oh, Elka is a good Yiddish name.
Avada.
Yeah. Elka is a diminutive of Ella, which was a very popular Yiddish name. Very classy. I saw Jonathan's hand raised.
Yes, I wanted a Yiddish name. My Hebrew name is Netanel, but so I know
So
that's
you-
confusing.
Well, you could be Nasanel, which would
Netanel.
be, yeah, Nasanel,
Yeah.
Nasanel.
Nasanel.
Yeah,
That was my
Nasan.
great-grandfather's name. I think that's my namesake anyways, so that's
Well,
fantastic.
there you go. So Nasanel in Yiddish class.
Nasanel,
Okay.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Just make sure you get that emphasis on the second syllable.
Nasanel. Nasanel. Got
Now it sounded like Yiddish.
it.
Okay, I have a
Thank you.
question, please. I'm coming from the blank screen. This is
Oh, hello from the
Dana.
blank screen.
But I don't know if it's Hebrew or Yiddish, actually. It's Mira. And so can you tell me, is that also Yiddish or is it just Yiddish? What's the story?
It is. It's a Yiddish name derived from the Hebrew Miriam.
Miriam,
It's
right.
very
Okay, so I
popular
have a Yiddish name.
You have a Yiddish name already, Mira.
I got it. I'm keeping it.
If you'd like, you could take the diminutive Miro and be Miro or Mirale. But
I like Mira. I like Mira.
Perfect. You're all set then.
Thank you.
Looks like Andrew has his hand raised.
Okay, Andrew.
My Hebrew name is Avram, and I'm named after my great-grandfather from Romania named Abi. I only know his nickname was Abi. I don't know what his Yiddish name was. So what would the Yiddish equivalent of Avram be?
It would almost certainly be Avram.
Okay, so it would still
So
be.
it's the
Okay,
same
excellent.
name, and the pronunciation is going to hit that last syllable hard. Avram.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I see another hand?
Or
Shana?
we could do also Avramela.
Avramela. That's very
Avramel.
lovely. Yeah.
Now, do you know
Shana?
you know my name to be Hebrew or Yiddish? at all?
Your name is Yiddish already.
Okay. And I was named after my grandmother and they called her Jenny. So that's.
Oh, my middle name is Jenny after my great grandmother. Yeah, but Sharna is already a good, beautiful Yiddish name.
Okay. All right.
Any other?
Yes, hello.
Yeah. Wait,
This
who's
is
talking?
Alexander. You have a name for Alexander?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very popular name among Yiddish speakers because of a relatively reform-minded Tsar named Alexander. So the Yiddish way of pronouncing it is Sender or Senderl. But that comes from Alexander. Alexander, Sender.
Thank
So
you.
it's
My
Sender.
fiance's name is Joy. Is there an equivalent to Joy?
Yes, Freda. Freda or Fredel. Yeah.
Freda.
Freda with an F, F-R-E-Y.
Okay. She's my Tata Shenala.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Donna.
Could you say my name again?
Yes, remind me.
Devorah.
So Dvoira. Dvoira, and I think the middle name was Yehudis?
Yiddish.
Yiddish. Okay. So Dvoira Yiddish.
Dvoria. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
We're ready for the shtetl here. I'm hearing all these names, all these Yiddish names. It's like,
Mitchell Gray, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, so English name Mitchell, Hebrew name Shulam.
Shulam.
Just Shulam?
Yeah, Shulam.
As in Shtisel.
As in Shulam Shtisel, Shulam Lemer. You're in good company these days.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I have one more.
Yeah, Avram.
Yeah, what would Nina be?
So Nina was actually used as a Yiddish name. It was a fairly popular name in Yiddish.
We discovered that Nina meant great-granddaughter. That was how we were able to name her after two of her grandmothers.
Oh, that's really beautiful, as in Nin in Hebrew. Nina. Yeah. Great. Hi, Nina. Yeah, any other questions? Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'll be in touch with an updated worksheet with translation, and I'll see you all next Monday night, God willing.
Okay. Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Gute Nacht.
Stay on for a sec.
Danke. Gute Nacht, Dank.
Gute Nacht. Seid gesund. Seid mir alle gesund.
Seid gesund. Thank you. Bye, Donna. Okay, that's it.
Up with the chats. Okay. So we have our plan. Some people seem to want a Yiddish alphabet, the Aleph base, that they can access. So I'll look for it somewhere online. It shouldn't be too hard to find.
yeah, maybe we can send out a resource to Chevra with that. That could be helpful.
All right.
It was beautiful. Excellent.
Okay, good. Yeah, it looks like people have a lot of positive feedback, so I think we're good. Do you think this is okay time-wise, that people can kind of leave as they need to after?
I think in general it's good. I mean, my personal feeling is sometimes it's good when you have like a definitive end to it, so that people feel like missing if they have to jump out. So I think it's good. By the way, if it's 9:05 or 9:10, I think that's also fine. But I think it's good to have kind of like a hard stop, and then stay on if you want for a few minutes of schmoozing and questions stay on as an
Mhm.
optional thing, but that way,
Okay.
you know, it's no one feels like they're, you know, they had to go and therefore they might be missing
Right.
something, other than the optional. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So
Okay.
good.
So when you have
So
it,
you-
actually send it to me. I'll send it out to the group, and
Okay.
yeah, should be good.
Today is Monday. If you don't have it from me by Wednesday, just send me a reminder.
Sure, no problem. No problem.
All right.
But
Excellent.
all right,
Thank you.
Shkoyach, thank you. All right. Have a
Sure.
good night.
Because